I will demonstrate the tying of the coffin fly, which you'll see the stages in the museum. But first I'd like to show you a little of the materials that go into it. First we have our hook, which is a Mustad 79580, I have to look, and a number 12. And then we have teal, which comes from the bird, that is like a wood duck, and we take the little dark feathers off of that. Then we have saddles, white saddles, which are rooster saddles from the back of the neck. And then we have also badger that is used. These are old Indian necks that are also the roosters, and they come from the back of the neck of the roosters. But you see they're quite pretty. And we have peccary, which is a wild boar from Texas. And peccary comes kind of in pieces like this for fly tires maybe, and you'll find it in little packages usually. And there it is again. This is the little pieces that I'll use for the tail. I have a little nylon thread. I'll use that for reinforcing, and I'll use some poly. And I usually make gauges for my hackle, which I pick, and I use a little gauge here, and then I make a little cardboard gauge also, which kind of makes it good for wings. This is my gauge that I'll measure my hackles on, and I have a couple pairs of scissors right here. And you know, one of the things you really need is a good pair of scissors, so buy a good pair of scissors. This is just a weight that I'll use to hang my thread on because I don't use a bobbin. Then we have a pair of tweezers, which are necessary, and hackle pliers. I have two here. One is quite old, but it's wearing out. And then, let's see, what else? I have a needle here. You can make something just with a little piece of wood and put a needle in it. That comes in handy a lot of times. And I guess now we'll go into our demonstration. I'll get a hook out here. And you need a nice vise once you've tied a little bit. For 40 years I had an old universal, but now I have a nice new vise the last 3 or 4 years. Get the hook in, and now I need some thread. I have some 6/0 here I'll use. And I put that on the hook. I check to make sure the hook is closed. It's not, so I'll close that eye on the hook. This vise is tough enough that I can do that. Now that's tight. Now I'm going to put the thread about 1/8 of an inch from the front, and I'll put on about 5 turns. And I will take 2 of these teal feathers, and I'll take them and I'll put them back to back so the wings go out. Such. And I hold them up to see that they're going to be even. That'll get them equal distance. And I'll take my guide, and that'll tell me that my height of my wing. I can have it as full, or I can have it where I've got another little mark, and I'm going to make them about the size 12. Extra size 12. Now I take my hackle, my feather hackle, and I lay it on the top of the hook, squeeze between my fingers, and I'm going to take the thread and put it between my fingers and come right down straight. And I'll do that again. And once I get maybe 2 turns on, that's going to hold that nice and tight. And then I'm going to put maybe 6 or 8 more turns on. And I'll clip all this back excess off here at an angle. And I'm going to take the thread and go to the back of the bare hook. And I'll bring the thread back up to the base of the wing, which then I'll grasp, bring back, and I'll put about 5 turns of thread right in front of it. And that'll hold that wing up. Now I'm going to take those wings that are just naturally split to each end. I'm going to take the half that are split and hold it and make a figure 8, going between and around. And I'll do that a couple times, and you'll see the wings then are nice and upright. Now, you always have some little pieces that aren't necessary, so you just clip them off. You don't have to, it's just for beauty. When you tie your own flies, you can kind of do as you'd like. Now I'm going back and I'm going to put the tail on, so I take the thread right to the back. And I'm going to take 3 pieces of the peccary, which is the wild boar. And I'm just going to put them together. And I kind of hold them up too and get them even. I have another little guide, because you can make your tails any size you want, but I have to make them all the same size because I sell them. And I know I want them that long, so I'll put them on. I'll hold them in my left hand and I just lay them right on top of the hook. Bring that thread up between my fingers and then come right down on it. Tight to the hook, and then I'll make about 3 more turns and go right up to the head. I just split those tails a little. And I clip that excess, and then I go right up to where the edge of where I clipped and come back. And then you take your thread and you just go in and out of the tails. You just kind of circle the tails, and that keeps them split. And I'll do all the tails that way. First the one, it doesn't matter what order you do them. I'll go inside, I'll get the 3rd one in the middle, just grab the little feather there. And I'll do it again. And then I'll just go back in between again. And that'll hold that tail pretty well. I missed that one, so I'll catch it again. Okay, and now I'm going to get a little thread that I'll use for a reinforcement and put that in first. And I find if I just take that thread and lay it across the other thread, and then I can just bring it right down. And I can pull it the right length. Then I'm going to take this feather. Now I'm going to do this feather so you can see what I do. I take one of these feathers off the saddle, and I come up to the top and I just bring my fingers down it like that. It opens it up. And I'll take the scissors and I'm going to cut that right next to the center core. And if you don't do it really even, you can get that again afterwards, but it makes it easier to tie if you do that first. It just takes a few minutes. Now usually what I do is I get everything ready beforehand, and then you don't have to stop when you're tying, you just grab. And I'll do this side, and I'll go right down the center core. Fly tying can be tedious. There's a lot of steps to it, especially when you tie these flies. Alright, now I'm just going to pull off that soft feather, and I'm going to cut it. And now I'll put that in right down at the base of where I cut it. And I put it in at the top on the side, and the thread goes right over it. And then I will take a piece of this poly. Poly comes in 3 little pieces are right in that one piece, and I'll just split it. It splits right automatically, and you just take one of them. And I'll do that again. I put that over the thread to hold it. Put it down like that. And then I take my other thread and I'll go right to the head. Now this is where I use my hackle plier because I don't use a bobbin, and I'll just hold the thread with it. I'm going to take this poly and I'll go up the body. And I go right up to where the thread is, and I will fasten it down, and I'll clip that to get rid of it. And I'll take my hackle pliers and I grasp the end of the feather, put it at an angle, and then I'll just wind it, leaving a little gap in between right up to the top. I'll try to do this slow enough so you can see. And as I get to the top where the thread is, then I'll just take the thread and put it over there. Now this is my reinforcing thread. Usually you counter wrap this way, but on this fly I'm just going to go over it and I make sure I catch parts of the hackle I just put on. And then I will take and I'll put a couple strands of thread over that to hold everything. And I'll clip off the excess. And now it's time to put our hackles on. Now, hackles come from these rooster necks, and I have a gauge that I measure with. It has all my sizes. Tying yourself, it doesn't matter as much. But you'd want a hackle that would be just a little shorter than the wings. You want the wings to show up above the hackle. And what I do is I take my hackle and I would just bend it, and then I can see what size I want. Now I've already taken my hackles and I've just got them already here. And all I have to do is take the excess off. Now I'll take these hackles and I'll take the soft part of the hackles off. Just leaving the good hackles, and I'll clip them. I use 4 hackles for this fly. It's a very full fly. When I'm looking for hackles, it's very hard to find stiff hackles, so I try and get some that are stiff and some that are soft. And the stiffness you can feel. Some of these, now that's not a bad feather. It's got quite a bit of stiffness to it. But there's so many feathers here, it'll float. And I've got the 4th feather there. And then I will pick them up, and what I found over the years, I take my heaviest feather first and put that on the top. That'll be the first one wound in, and I usually see which is the heaviest. Sometimes that's not always true, but it does work pretty good. It makes the second one go in easier, and the last one, which is the thinnest, goes right through it the best. Because 4 hackles is a lot. Oops, I just turned a hackle there. Let's get that set up good. They all want to be together, top on top of each other. There, now I have the 4. You see they're all together. They're all going down. And I'm going to grab them so you have all of them equal. The stems are going to be equal together, all 4 of them. And I'm going to put them in with stems showing. There'll be parts of the stems above. And I'll put, 3 turns on the front, and then I'll go to the front and come to the bottom of the last stem. Usually with our flies, we've always left a little room in the front because then you have room to tie your fly on. It can be awfully hard to get a fly on that's too full. Now I'm taking this hackle, I get my hackle pliers on the end, and I'll just bring it up and push it to the right a little bit. It kind of gets it ready to go on. Get it perpendicular, and then I will just go around, and I'll do maybe 2 turns in the back, and then I'll put another couple turns. It depends on the length of your hackle. I got 2 turns there on that one. That's a little smaller hackle. Now I'll take the second one in line, and I'll do the same thing. I'll grab that with my hackle pliers, and I'll put 1 turn, and I'm going to go right to the, well, I'll do another turn here in the back. And then I'll do another couple turns in the front, and I take my thread and I'll fasten that securely across. Now I'll take the 3rd hackle, just kind of pull that up to right angles and then straight again, perpendicularly. I have trouble with my English too. And now I will get a little more on the turns on that. That one I had about 3 turns on the front. And we'll take the last one And I get that perpendicularly, and there we go. Oops, there it goes. That'll happen. And we start again. Now I'm going to run this one through, and now I'll put one turn on here, and then I'm going to go right to the front of the fly, and I'll put on about 2 or 3 turns. And I'll put my thread over that. Now I will take and I will cut all that extra hackle off. And now I'm going to make a whip finish. And I take and make a circle, catch it with a thread, and then I will make about 4 or 5 turns. 2, 3, 4, I'll put another one on. 5. And then you just take, and any little feathers that are standing out you don't like, you can just snip off. Same in the back. What I do is usually take it out and I put it on my hackle pliers, and then I just trim it. These hackle pliers are getting a little old. And then I'll just trim it. I'll take off any little feathers that I don't like. Can have a nice little trim. There's one up there I don't like, it's poking out. And then lots of times I'll just take, see the body is all with the little hackle that comes out that you've cut, and I'll just, if I don't like the trim on it, I'll give it a little more of a trim. Just don't cut your tail when you do this. I've done that too. There, and that is the coffin fly. And I would take, I have a hypodermic here that has varnish in it, and I would take and just put a good sized drop of varnish through it. You can use any kind of a sealant you want, but we use varnish. And there you go. You've got a coffin fly. Now everybody can tie a fly. They don't have to buy any.
I'm getting another good shot of it finished.
And there we are, a finished coffin fly. Okay, now see as I spin it, there's a little feather that I don't like. I just clip that off. There you go. You see the tails, 3 tails. It's got the spiny body, which is one of Dad's little additions from the original. And that's it. And that was tied way back in about 1930. And the height of all the excitement was always the big mayfly hatch, which was very, very thick in those days and very, very hard to imitate. And of course we tried every different way. Uprights, bent wings, everything imaginable. Down wings. And of course one of the ones most consistent in talking about this fly was Ted Townsend, who was a game warden from Westchester County with a lot of spare time and evidently some family money too. Otherwise, I don't know how he ever got off so much, because he'd be up there weekend after weekend, and many times a couple of more days. Had a big old open LaSalle touring car, which we rode around in with him in the back, catching flies to look at with all our endeavors. And this particular time, we were working very busy. Walt had been working with some teal wings, along with hackle point wings, black on this fly.
Ted had been a very interested spectator, and he was in his city clothes that night. The particular night, he just more or less gotten there not too long ago from driving up. I think he had to go back down to a funeral. He'd come right back from it. And we were all up in that room, and the fly gradually began to evolve, and we tied the first coffin fly, which we had not yet named. It looked pretty good. So Ted was going to try it the next day. And he says, we got to call this thing something. And he says, it's black and white, and I just came from a funeral. He says, how about coffin fly? And that was how it got its name. And of course, he used it then the next day and on, and had great success with it, which was the origin of that particular fly.